Hi, everyone. Welcome to SmartCatholics Mastermind. I'm your host, Dominic D'Souza, and I am joined by Raphy Feolino, who is a certified relationship coach. Raphy, welcome.
Hey, what's up, Dominic? So excited to connect with you all the time, and thank you for having me on.
Sure. We're excited to get into your story and then talk about your work. But first, Smart Catholics Mastermind is a live series to meet the minds and hearts of our creators, the leaders, and hosts in our community. They devote their time and talent to mastering their vocation so that you can live a fuller life faster. So, Raphy, let's just dive right in. I want to help people get to know you if they've never actually heard you or met you before. Let's start with a story. What was there a moment in your life where you began to realize I need to do something different? I need to change what I'm doing, right? That
Mm.
started to set you up towards the work that you're doing now. What was that story? What was that moment?
Yeah, so man, it's crazy just kind of like going back to the moment because every time I share it, I remember I remember the darkness that I was in, like the loneliness, and it's crazy because it's now set us up to do this type of work. But it was actually when I was engaged before I met my new wife. Um, that I'm not like I wasn't engaged with her, but there's another engagement that happened. And I was kind of like going through the different things like everybody was telling me with relationships, like, oh yeah, take your time and have fun, like just kind of like don't even rush things. And I was in this relationship kind of like applying that advice to my own relationship. So I was with her for about 5 years, and I thought like taking that next step was the right thing because I saw that, hey, I mean, like we've been dating for 5 years, like shouldn't we get married sometime? Not really thinking about like, oh, the virtues of a future spouse, or like I wasn't thinking of that type of stuff. I just knew that, hey, like I figured the next step would be marriage, so I got engaged. And then somebody really pivotal came into my life. He was my spiritual director, who is now an auxiliary bishop for a diocese. And I met him when he was a priest. And one of the things that he shared with me was the truth that he was really good at. I didn't really like hearing it, but he shared me the truth about my relationship, about what I was doing. I wasn't really living out a Christ-centered relationship. I was really living out an unchaste relationship, not pure. We weren't really like we had really toxic ways of communicating and stuff like that. And he was able to reveal that to me, that things that I couldn't see because I was so like emotionally invested in this relationship.
Yeah.
But I had to make that hard decision after being engaged for about like a few months to break off that engagement. When I broke off that engagement, I was away from family. I was away from support. I was serving in the military at the time. And at that moment, I just felt like the most depressed because 5 years of my life, I had this identity around serving her and loving her, right? I didn't really know what it meant.
Hmm.
Um, and when I broke off that engagement, I was like, who am I? Like, I don't even know who to reach out to. Like,
Hmm.
I've been so ingrained in this relationship that I don't even know myself anymore. I don't know what my purpose is. And it was a scary point in my life, but in the midst of the darkness, that's where God pulls us out too. I think like that whole journey, just like looking back at it, it was supposed to happen, and he shared with me like a longing for something. I didn't know what it was, but now like looking back at that moment, I knew that it was a longing for God. It was a longing for true, authentic love that I thought I would find in another woman, but I could only find in Jesus Christ. And when I broke up with her, that engagement, that singlehood was like pivotal. Like I came back to the church. Like I really like started living out my faith. Living out a life of purity and chastity, and finding good Catholic brothers to surround myself with. And but it was all through like that dark time. So thanks be to God for that. But man, it was rough. I wouldn't wish it on anybody else. So that's why I feel called to share my story so people don't end up like how I was.
Yeah. Well, perfect segue there. Share with us your ministry then, because that's emerged literally out of the heart of those moments, I imagine.
Yeah. So our ministry is a journey to marriage. So what we do is we help Catholics create holy and healthy relationships before marriage. And a lot of it was stemmed from our, like my own story, that I want to really prevent people from having to go through that type of a relationship, because we see a lot of couples that we work with that they date for years and years and years on end, kind of like stuck, not knowing when to take the next step, having a lot of fear and anxiety about this large commitment. And we try to help couples get unstuck and like say yes to God's will. Like if that is marriage, like say yes and just commit and have confidence in Him rather than ourselves. Um, so that's what we did. And we really also created because we experienced kind of like an average experience when we were engaged. When me and my wife Sara, where we run this ministry together. When we were engaged, we didn't really have a great pre-Cana experience. It was a 3-day retreat. We kind of talked about what to talk about, like all these questions. You should talk about communication and don't go to bed angry and all these different things that were really important, but like no one really taught us the practical things of how to actually do it. We were always taught like the principles, of what's important, but not like how to do it. And that's where we kind of were thinking about, like, hey, we should be coaches and we should teach people like the practically, like how do you communicate? How do you resolve conflict when it happens? How do you talk about finances? How do you build a spiritual life? Um, so that's what we kind of do now, helping couples before marriage, so that when they're in marriage, they're not reactive. They're proactive. They know what they're going to expect. They know the challenges and how to react, like what you kind of share, like as a first responder, like they know they're not like reactive or anything. They just know they know how to go when it
Brilliant,
happens.
brilliant. How long have you guys been working in this with this ministry?
Yeah. Yeah, so we went full time in our ministry, I believe June of 2020 during the pandemic.
So
um
full year, and I think you launched with a conference too, right?
yes, in October. So that was like the first thing like that people really knew about us, that conference, which happened in October 2020. It's called the Catholic Engaged Summit.
Hmm.
Brought a bunch of engaged couples. But when we started to see our audience, there's a lot of people, married couples, singles, dating couples, and it was definitely a blast.
That's awesome. I think you shared at one point that you'd intended to reach out to a particular kind of person, a Catholic in a particular state, like being engaged, but then you were kind of overwhelmed by there's all kinds of other people, uh,
Mm-hmm.
not just those particular Catholics. What is that? So, who tell us more about that, and who are they, and what are you working on with? What was it? Journey through faith? Is that what it was called?
Journey to marriage.
Pardon me, Journey to Marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were initially thinking to create a program for engaged couples that might have felt the same way we felt, where they're like, was that it? Like, it was only a 3-day retreat. And we wanted to create a program for them, which we did. But then one of the things that we're starting to see, that more people reach out to us for advice and help, are dating couples. So we're seeing a lot of Catholic dating couples that they're like, engaged couples, they got pre-Cana. They got marriage prep, like, but what about us? Like, we're trying to figure this whole thing out ourselves. They're trying to read the books. You're trying to do like the podcast and stuff like that, theology of the body, but still,
Hmm.
like, there's so much information that they're like, how do we actually do? Like, where do we start?
Yeah.
How do we actually implement the things that we're learning? Because they sound great, but how do you actually do it in real life? So we work a lot with dating couples, and kind of we're focused on creating more resources around that state of life. Because now looking back, when I was dating, in that past relationship, if I were to learn a lot of these things in my dating life, I wouldn't have had gotten engaged.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have gotten through all that toxicity. Like if I were to learn these skill sets so early on, I would have discerned well if I
Hmm.
figured out, hey, let's take that next step, or maybe we shouldn't take that next step, a lot faster, rather than spending years and years and years kind of just dating and
Yeah.
having fun. That's what we're trying to really create for our Catholic dating couples right now.
Fantastic. So I appreciate that you use that word first responder, and I want to ask you how uh, how you use that, how you internalize that. First, let me sort of explain it, because it is a bit of a funny word, and we get people like, "Huh, that's a medical term. You're like talking about being an
Mhm.
ambulance chaser or something?" No, 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 no. It's nothing like that. Um, the Holy Father has described the need for the church today to think of ourselves as a battlefield hospital. There's people hurting everywhere, and so if we're like a field hospital, then there's surgeons and there's theologians, kind of, in the tents, who are here to take care of people. But then where does that leave us? Well, church ministers to us, and then we're also part of the church, but we minister to the world. We're the front line, the frontier, to friends and family. So that idea then of being a first responder is that we get to be first on the scene, and all of us have a charism to bring our humanity, the humanity of Christ, even if we don't have all the answers. So I'm curious, when you hear that, what does first responder bring to your mind, and then how are you also, finding your own way to live that out?
Yeah, so it's funny that you're like talking about battlefield and all stuff. I'm getting excited because I'm a veteran myself. I served in the military, and I was actually I was I was working in the medical field. So we would do exercises
Oh
actually, like
wow,
first, like going into the field and figuring things out, triage. Like we learned a lot of that type of stuff, and it's not fun. It's kind of scary, like when you're in all these high pressure situations.
yeah,
But it's funny how you kind of you shared that, because I actually started to experience the reason why I felt really drawn to do this was because what I was seeing in the military was a lot of broken families. There was
mm,
a lot of broken families, a lot of divorces, and I started to see not the effect on just the individual, like my friends, my closest friends, but how that affects the mission, how that affects the workplace, and just like of course, like it keeps going outwards, like the society in general, that
right,
divorce is not like divorce is not the solution to the problem, right? And
mhm,
it's skill sets. People are not learning how to really rekindle their intimacy and communicate and resolve conflict and have Christ in the center, right? Because Christ makes that is the glue to the marriage and the relationship. And seeing that like firsthand, I knew I had to do something about it. I didn't know how to do it, but I just felt this strong calling, and I left this stable job that provided for my family to do this
wow,
thing, that has now provided for my family, but now has provided for so many couples. What we like to talk to, because we work with a lot of couples that are not married. We always tell them like marriage is a battlefield. Like when you enter into marriage, especially the right way as a sacrament, like you have the devil and God like coming after your heart, like all is always like a spiritual warfare. So marriage is not going to be easy. There's going to be challenges. What you're entering into is like spiritual warfare, especially like coming like on the journey to marriage, because the devil knows like he doesn't want you guys to get married. Like he wants to throw impurity, all these different distractions, all these different things. And once they kind of see it as that mindset that hey, marriage is a battlefield, let's equip ourselves. Like, what are the weapons we need? What are the sacraments we need? What are the skill sets we need so that we can be well equipped? That when we enter into that marriage battlefield, we're ready to go. And But yeah, did I answer your question, Dominic?
no, that's awesome. It does, and I really I didn't know this about your service. Thank you for your service, by the way. But I didn't know that you were in the medical space. So in a way, you really do get the sort of emergency context of being a first responder, and then it is very different, I think, to transition then into a faith space, but to then bring those same skills, or to reinterpret them. What do they call that? Learning transfer. So
Mm-hmm.
let's wrap up here in our last minute, Raphy. If you had 1 minute to share your most important message with the world, what would you say?
Ooh, ooh, there's so much I would like to say, but I think something that like has been really resonating with me, I guess like these past couple of months, especially like now doing this ministry and leaving security and from a stable job to do this full time. I think it's like God will provide. God will provide for you. Like his grace is sufficient. Like if there's something that you're being tugged to, like, and you know it's out of good intention, you want to help somebody, you've got to do it and not like think on your own confidence, but always put your confidence in God. Because when we did that, it was like during pandemic land, and we just had our first newborn. There was so much uncertainty to start a ministry from scratch, but we did it because God, we felt like God was calling us. And I kind of we're always reminded by the apostles, like the first apostles, when Jesus called them, and they're like, "Who is this guy?" Like, but I'll follow you, you know. And just having that confidence in God, knowing that He will provide, and especially like a lot of our couples that we work with, knowing that yes, you're going to learn the skill sets, we're going to teach you, but you're going to need God. Like, put your confidence in God, not in your partner. Like, your partner is not going to be perfect, and you shouldn't expect them to be perfect. Only God is going to be perfect, and you can just seek to understand that, to have compassion for your partner when they fall, when they don't meet your expectations, right? That we try to put on our partners, and to have compassion, just like how Jesus is calling us to be compassionate, not to judge, not to belittle, but to know that everything comes from God, and to have like full confidence in Him. Because once you do, like everything works out. And that's one thing that I'm starting to notice. Like when I'm not having confidence, I get anxiety, I get stressed out. Like, oh, I have all these worries. Like I got this to do tomorrow, all these different things. But I'm like,
Yeah.
the Lord's at work. Like when I'm sleeping, the Lord's at work when I'm taking a break, when I'm with my family. And it's not just me. There's so much more that's happening that we can't see. That's really amazing, and it's so great to be a Catholic, to be a believer.
Beautiful. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you, Raphy. And for those who enjoyed this episode, thank you for watching. And yeah, if you did enjoy it, please share it with that one person out there, your one friend that you think would also really like to see it. And then come and regroup with us in the free Catholic community on smartcatholics.com. We're free of trolls and ads and toxicity. We are faithful to the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and the Church. We're committed to a culture of kindness and learning. Does that sound like you? Well, come on over and join us. Thanks again, Raphy. It was really good to have you.
Thank you, Dominic.
God bless everyone. Have a great day.